The Memphis Grizzlies are in a very precarious situation right now. They've been missing multiple key players at the start of the season. They're currently 1-8 as of this video. There aren't many signs of success, and morale is looking especially low. Now, of course, it's too early in the season to say that they can't pull it together, as we've seen the Pelicans recently go from starting 1-12 to making the play-in and then the playoffs in 2022. We also saw the Lakers go from possibly missing the play-in to having one of the best records post-deadline and making a Western Conference Finals. But the main goal for the Grizzlies should have been the holdout for Ja Morant to get back, and we're 8 games in the season, with the Grizzlies being 1-8 as one of the worst teams in basketball, if not the worst, though I'd say the Wizards probably take the cake for that. What's even worse is that they're in a very stacked Western Conference, which will most likely have many teams fighting to escape the play-in into the playoffs. So getting off to a good start is crucial for them to seamlessly slide Ja Morant back onto the team. The team overall seems very out of sorts on both the offensive and defensive ends. This offseason they lost both Dillon Brooks and Tyus Jones, both key players for the team, and they're both already playing well with their new teams, as Brooks is averaging 15 points on 50-50 splits on the Rockets, and Tyus Jones as usual is playing low turnover, high assist basketball on the Wizards, despite them being one of the worst teams on offense. Their absence from the team has already made this much of an effect, not to mention that Steven Adams and Brandon Clark will miss most, if not all, of the season. As the worst team in basketball right next to the Blazers, the film just doesn't look good at all. One bright side for the team is the leap of Desmond Bane, who most of us were expecting to take that leap in Ja's absence. He's currently averaging 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists on 46% shooting. He's also taking more threes, taking almost 10 a game compared to his 7 last season. A lot of the time he'll operate off of ball screens to get to his spots where he can create for himself off step backs or drive, which he's been doing a lot more this season. The team's also still running plenty of off-ball sets for him, though I think some more stagger screens to get him wide open looks would be more beneficial for a more efficient offense, because it feels like he's been given the green light to basically pull up from anywhere. Jaren Jackson Jr. on offense is still kind of worrying, especially his post play or just his overall touch around the basket. It's fairly weak. He doesn't use many post moves, the aggressiveness isn't always there, and at times he throws up weak hook shots. Adding a mid-range game to his repertoire would make him a much more dangerous player, where he can offset his weaknesses of posting up with triple threat jumpers. One thing that's been making this offense incomplete is a true playmaker now that Tyus Jones is gone. Tyus is a high assist to turnover ratio player who could set up players well, and with him getting traded to the Wizards, there's been a hole in the offense when it comes to playmaking. Marcus Smart's kind of been placed into this main facilitator role. He's currently averaging 4 turnovers, though outside of that he's been fine, except his 3-ball could be a little better as he's shooting 31% on 6 threes. I can see the Grizzlies running a small ball lineup of Ja, Smart, and Bane on the floor, considering that Smart plays a bit bigger at his position. When the Grizzlies sit down Bane, the offense basically collapses. With Steven Adams gone, they're missing his valuable screen setting, his elite offensive rebounding, which was at the top of the league last year when he was healthy, and his passing ability, which they definitely have a need for when running off-ball screen actions where Adams catches the ball and looks for cutting players. Because for right now, Bismack Biyombo isn't really the best passer. He's been turning over the ball in his first few games with them, so I think Steven Adams has that much of an impact on their offense. On defense, I was interested in the pairing of Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr. Smart, who was a former Defensive Player of the Year, and Jaren, who won it last year. Right now, the team's currently around the middle of the pack when it comes to defense. Opposing teams make the most threes against them, while they do fairly well against guarding the paint, at least when Jaren Jackson's on the floor as a roaming defender, as he provides elite weak side help defense. Overall, they're doing well at holding their own, but whether it's sustainable is another thing. The need for defensive versatility is there, which would be improved with the vertical athletic threat Brandon Clark, who can also hold his own when guarding the perimeter. They have a lot of slow-footed players on the court, which makes it easier for teams to exploit their slow rotations, allowing them to rain down threes. Kenneth Lofton Jr., for example, has the skill set to get you 10 points on offense, but he may give up 12 points on the defensive end. Even on misses, the fact that the team is still missing a true rebounding big is a problem. Bismack Biyombo, who they signed to refine their inside presence, he's still fairly undersized, and Jaren Jackson is the tallest player that's currently playing, but the rebounding ability just isn't there. The small things that help you rebound, such as positioning and dexterous hand movement to tip the ball towards yourself, are things that the team needs for their bigs, and while Jaren's had some slight improvement, it hasn't been enough to keep them from getting out-rebounded for the majority of their games. A spot they should be looking to secure before Ja's return is the play-in range, because the fight for the playoffs is going to be a difficult one, especially in the Western Conference. The question is whether the team can make some noise when Ja returns. We all know the impact that he makes for the team, that's for sure. But we saw in the playoffs last year how badly this team needs to be healthy to make a good run. With Steven Adams gone, they've taken a huge hit on both ends. To fill in this gap, I believe a trade needs to be made at some point, probably sooner than later so they don't fall too behind before the trade deadline approaches. I decided to take a look around the internet at some trade ideas to fill in the gap at the center position. One trade idea on Fanspo proposed a trade where the Grizzlies would send off Brandon Clark, Jake LaRavia, and a 2024 lottery-protected first-round pick in exchange for Clint Capella. The Hawks would finally be able to get Onyeka Okongwu into that starting lineup position that many Hawks fans have been hoping for, and the Grizzlies would get a rim-protecting big who happens to be one of the best rebounders in the league at his position despite his regression in these past few years. The biggest downside of the trade is that Brandon Clark is out indefinitely with a torn Achilles, which we all understand can significantly affect his play. Clark returning this season at some point could be possible though, and the Hawks would still benefit from Clark's better perimeter defense and athleticism compared to Capella, and would receive a pick that they'll likely keep with Ja Morant's return. With Capella, I can see him helping the Grizzlies in the playoff hunt. While I won't say that the trade's equal for both sides, I think the trade isn't something out of the question. Another Fanspo trade looks to move Steven Adams, a 2027 unprotected first, and 2026 and 2027 second-round picks for Nikola Vucevic. Now, this is a trade that I feel like would happen near the deadline, with the Bulls looking to have a last year attempting to contend with their big three and with their extension of Vucevic in the offseason. If the Bulls hover around the play-in or outside of it, it's possible that Vucevic gets moved by the deadline. Unprotected firsts are not things that are easily given out, and if the Bulls are looking to go back into a rebuild, stacking up on some picks wouldn't be a bad idea. While Vucevic isn't much of a good defender, he can rebound well, has a good post game, can set good quality screens, and though he's been struggling this year shooting 27% from 3, he can occasionally space the floor. Finally, we have the most blockbuster trade of them all, with the Minnesota Timberwolves sending Karl-Anthony Towns to the Grizzlies in exchange for Luke Kennard, Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, a 2024 and 2026 unprotected first-round picks, and a 2027 first-round pick swap. Right now, the Timberwolves are doing very well, taking down both of the number 1 seeds in each conference, the Celtics and the Nuggets. They're statistically the best defensive team in basketball, and as long as they stay healthy, we could be in for a surprise, as last year we weren't able to see them at their best with Towns missing a majority of the season with an injury. The only reason I could see the Grizzlies doing this trade is if the team starts to fall off by the deadline. I think they'll likely grit their teeth and bear the fact that Cat isn't playing very well at the moment, at least offensively. He's been a bit better defensively this year, and the Grizzlies surely need his rebounding, as well as his ability to stretch the floor. With Cat now next to another big that can shoot, they can accentuate this offense into a top 3-point shooting team. And while he can shoot, he'll also be able to run more screening roles when Ja returns. One thing about Cat playing at the 4 in Minnesota was the fact that Gobert can't shoot and needs to be the main roller, which pushes Cat out onto the perimeter. For the Timberwolves' benefit, they get some of the draft capital they traded away for Gobert, along with a good shooter in Kennard. We could then possibly see Naz Reid at the 4 instead of Towns. I think that a trade is essential for this team to reach their full potential, and I'm interested to hear if any of you have some trade targets as well, so let me know in the comments below. Peace.